fight AI with AI. So just like, and we've seen that play out in the mobile world, in the cloud world. So just like attackers are using AI to make attacks harder, scale it more, make it available to random little kids who didn't really have the training. Same thing can be done on the defense side as well.
So thank you for joining Product Management Exercises session on AI cybersecurity for product managers. It's hosted by Sumedh Barde. He's Chief Product Officer at Simbian.ai, an AI-driven cybersecurity firm. We're very excited for his talk. Just before we kick it off, I wanted to remind everybody that we have got our AI Product Manager cohort. It's a learning program. It's a 5-week intense program where you will learn the fundamentals of AI in product management with over 20 hours of workshops, live workshops, and you get to be part of our community and continued access to learning materials and hopefully have a wonderful impact on your career. And that kicks off May 12th. I'll put the link in Zoom. It is on LinkedIn as well. And we'd love for you guys to join us. Let me know if you have any questions about that. But without further ado, I want to introduce Sumedh, and we are extremely excited to hear a lot about AI cybersecurity for product managers. I'll pass it on to you, Sumedh.
Thank you, Ida, for having me on the show. I'm excited to talk to all of you today. AI and cybersecurity both are hot areas, and the intersection of them is just evolving every day. So every time I do this kind of presentation, it looks completely different. Been doing this in a few different forums. This is interactive. Feel free to ask questions along the way. Happy to take them, put them in the Zoom chat or on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to answer them along the way. Let me get going. So the agenda today, when people talk about AI and cybersecurity, there are two angles. So I'm going to cover both of them. Primarily how AI impacts cybersecurity. That is what I do on my day job at work. But then there is also the other angle of how cybersecurity, what we should think about in terms of cybersecurity of AI itself. And the two of them go hand in hand. And then finally, I'll also talk a little bit about what this has meant to me as a product manager in terms of how my role has changed. And I would think that it's not just specific to security. I think those effects are, more general than security. But we can happy to have a discussion on that point as well. Before we get into the topic, just very brief bio about myself. I did my bachelor's and master's in computer science from IIT Bombay and the University of North Carolina. I joined out of college. I joined Microsoft right out of college. This was back in the 90s and was there for a very long time, 25 years almost. I started as an engineer in multimedia, and my day job was literally watching movies because I built the DVD playback and a bunch of other things, all the media playback in Windows. So I used to watch movies, breakpoint, watch it again, fix it, watch it again. At some point, cloud became a hot thing. And so I joined the cloud team. Microsoft was just beginning the whole journey to Azure, now one of the largest cloud platforms. And I was the very first product manager in security for Azure. And then I grew from there, built out the data security products in Azure and built out the whole team. Was there for about 10 years. It became mature. And at that point, so it's time for a change. And I went to Meta as the director of program management for just running security programs inside Meta. And now here I am at Symbian. This is a startup. I've been here the last 2 years. We are a Silicon Valley startup, about 50 people, little under 50 people, building security products with an AI bent on it. This talk is not going to be about Symbian, but just about the journey as a whole. So let me step back. Okay, so let's start with security. What's happening in cybersecurity overall? Nothing to do again with AI. This is the report from NIST, the US government organization, National Institute for, actually, what is NIST full form for? It's interesting. We use NIST all the time. Standards and Technology, I think. So today in security, by the way, this slide is about a year and a half out of date. The numbers have only grown since then. Today in security, there are an estimated like 663,000 open jobs. There just aren't enough people in the world who have the right skills to fill in the jobs available. Across the entire world, if you estimate the actual need, forget the open jobs, if you estimate the actual need for how many more people we need to just meet the basics of keeping companies and individuals secure, that's about 3.4 million people. You can hire people out of college, you can train them, but that takes easily a year or two. So today, this is the big gap. Last September, the White House started an entire program because just in the US alone, we are about 500,000 short. And so started an entire program about training people to get into the workforce in security and all that. So uh, that is the state of today. Forget AI. Now, how does AI change all of this? A little bit of history. So back when I started the cloud journey at Microsoft, we started building the Azure cloud. What we noticed was even before legitimate companies started using Azure, it was the cybercrime gangs of the world that were jumping on it first, trying to use Azure VMs for what is called command and control servers to, or maybe launch points to launch attacks on others, like doing botnets. So our initial effort over there was all around trying to detect fraudulent use cases of VMs and clamp down on these and identify who's doing these and then go after them. And that is generally true with every technology wave I've seen. Every technology wave, the bad guys will jump on it in very creative ways before the good guys actually start using that new technology. And AI is no different. So I live in Seattle. This picture on the right, um, this happened a couple of days ago. Someone hacked all of the pedestrian signals with a voice of Jeff Bezos. Amazon is the biggest employer here, right? Somebody hacked these pedestrian signals with the voice of Jeff Bezos saying, "Do not tax the rich." And I hear the same thing is going on around in San Francisco. I heard the pedestrian signals are getting hacked with Mark Zuckerberg's voice. So here, there's an attack happening. And on top of that, the voice that they're installing is such a realistic deep fake of Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg. It's just unrealistic. On the left, you see this thing. This is like the fact that somebody sitting in the Eastern Hemisphere might call you to say, "Hey, I'm from the IRS." That's not new. That's been happening for years. I get one of these calls probably every day, saying I owe somebody some bill or something. What's really changed is how realistic they are becoming, taking on voices, taking on wordings, phrases, language that is even more realistic, scraping information about me from the web and using that automatically as part of this. And this is all machine driven. So the scale at which this can happen, the ease with which this can happen is just mind blowing. So going back, if we were already 3.4 million short, you can see where we are going with this problem. If this chart is not, don't ignore ignore the actual slope, but this is just an illustrative chart of where how attackers are using AI creatively. So back like 10 years ago, there were simple attacks. People were using denial of service attacks, all that. Some time ago, about a couple years ago when ChatGPT launched, attacker seized on it saying, "Let me use that to create very realistic phishing mail. So no more typos in the email, no more, hey, I'm a prince in Nigeria waiting to get like 250 million inheritance. Do you want to participate with me?" These are like really, I get mails now that scrape my LinkedIn, my Facebook, things like that. And then turn it into almost a very personal looking mail. And I was like, is that a phishing mail or what? So it's very, very hard. If it's hard for a human to see that and identify it as a phishing mail, imagine how hard it is for Google and Microsoft and all those people working on trying to control spam. Back in November, Google announced a discovery of what's called a zero-day exploit. Zero-day exploits are vulnerabilities in software that are already out there. So the moment they are discovered, people can start, people are already vulnerable, essentially at that point. So Google's research team discovered a zero-day exploit using LLMs. So you can just extrapolate from there where this is going. At this rate, I expect that give it another couple of years, and attackers will be using LLMs to say the moment any vendor in the world announces a security weakness, okay, apply LLMs to it to automatically craft malware that exploits that weakness and then unleash it on the world. Today, that process takes weeks to months because some human is writing that software. Now that will turn into hours or even minutes based on AI. So net, this thing is just going to get worse. Now, the good thing is that there is a solution, which is fight AI with AI. So just like, and we've seen that play out in the mobile world, in the cloud world. So just like attackers are using AI to make attacks harder, scale it more, make it available to random little kids who didn't really have the training. Same thing can be done on the defense side as well. AI, the use of AI in security is not new. People have been using AI in security for a long time. But as AI has advanced, the level to which it is getting used is also advancing pretty rapidly. And I'm pretty confident that very soon, in a couple of years, that the two effects, like the red line and the blue line, they'll meet, and then we'll probably get back in balance. So let's talk a little bit about the journey of what has been happening on the defense side of security. So about 5, 6 years ago, maybe a little more, I don't remember the exact time, uh, there was an emergence of what's called anomaly detection. So historically, what used to happen was, let's say I'm getting a phishing mail. The mail providers, whether it's Google, Microsoft, or even the mail security providers like Proofpoint and so on, they used to have people write rules to say, if the email has these properties, then it's most likely a phishing mail or spam. And with lots of experience, they had built a lot of really good ways to identify what is spam. Okay, if it has typos, then it's most likely spam. If you never communicated with this person before, and then suddenly this person is sending mail to 5 people in your organization, that's most likely spam and so on. At some point, that became unscalable, and people started throwing AI at it to say, look, let's just train a model to identify what are characteristics of a phishing mail. And over time, as users receive the mail and report it as spam. So I do that, by the way, and all of you should. Anytime you get any spam mail, if it goes past the spam filter, please report it back to your mail provider with a this is spam, because it goes back into their training. Very, very useful to keep all of us safe. So AI models are able to identify with pretty good accuracy what is phishing, what is spam, and so on. Yes, we still end up getting a lot of it, but that's just because the volume of these is so high that there is no perfect solution to the problem. But so that part is very classical predictive AI. More recently, in the last 2 years, with the emergence of generative AI, a whole other class of defense solutions has come up. Initially, about 2 years ago, starting about 2 years ago to 1 year ago, was an emergence of these things called security copilots. Just like any other Microsoft Copilot or anything, it's basically an adjunct to existing software that is a chatbot where I can, as a user of the existing software, I can type in some commands and I can get some easy things. Um, That doesn't get rid of the job gap that I talked about with 600,000 openings and all of that, but it does make those existing people much more productive. And I'll show you examples of the same software, how it has evolved over time right after this, but just bear with me. So the Copilot was the initial foray into it. Now, here was the problem. Last year, when we started our company, we thought Copilot was the place to be. And every time we used to talk to, we initially, as we were validating our hypothesis, people used to ask us, how are you different from the existing copilots? And I used to like, okay, they solve these problems, I'll solve these other problems. That was not the answer they were looking for. What they really meant was, all these copilots suck. Are you going to suck as well? It's like, okay, why are they saying that? So it turned out that generally the co-pilots were like going to a networking party with strangers. You have some software on the other end, you don't know what its capabilities are. That software is catering to millions of users. It doesn't know exactly what's on top of your mind. So you are asking a question in the Copilot window, and it tries its best to interpret what that means, and it just completely misfires in a random direction. And so initially there was a big wave of disappointment with these co-pilots. Now think about going to a party where the other people are not strangers. Maybe this is a party about astronomers talking about the latest comet in the sky. Now, everybody now already has a common topic. Now, if you ask a question to random people in that party, you're not going to be far off. Likely, whatever you ask, the other person is likely to say, okay, I kind of understand what you're saying. I don't know all of it, but I at least understand the question. And let me offer you what I do know. And then there's a valid conversation there. So the co-pilots have started evolving to being, rather than a standalone co-pilot, being more adjuncts to existing domains. Like for instance, um, security investigation software might have a co-pilot right next to it that knows this is very specific to investigating alerts or things like that. So that is where co-pilots are evolving. More recently, as of 2024, agents became a thing. In 2024, they were mostly in development, but right now, as of 2025, aggressively, lots of companies are trying these agents. These agents, the difference is that they are autonomous. So it's not like they are waiting on users to give commands as to what to do. An example of an agent, my company is building an agent that you install, and just like a real human being, it looks at all of the sources of security alerts in your company, investigates them to see is where there is smoke, is there fire, is this a real alert, or was this just a benign misfire or some signal? We are also working on agents to create fixes, saying anytime somebody flags some software is vulnerable, we will download the fix, configure it to your environment, and then deploy it. So these are agents that are, think about them almost like you just outsourced a particular job, and you're not micromanaging them anymore. The agents came with certain skills and then just doing their job. There's a certain interaction between you and the agent, but that's just optional at that point. These things are in pilot right now, and many companies have already put them in production also. Give it another 2 years, I would expect we would soon be asking the question, most companies would be asking the question in security, how did we survive without agents? At the volume of security work that we're getting, how did we ever have a world where only humans were doing it? And so at that point, what I'm expecting is an entire second order ecosystem. Like I'm betting that another like year to 2 years, there will be an emerging set of products around once agents are in place, you need to govern them. Just like, for instance, in a real company with real people, you have an HR department looking at recruiting, training, you have finance controlling the costs. There will be certain amount of governance around agents as well, and there'll be a set of products around that. There'll be certification, reputation. Like when I hire somebody, I do a background check on that person. When I hire an agent, what do I know about the agent apart from the company? So expect soon there'll be a set of people whose job will be to certify. There'll be certificates, there'll be reputation marketplaces. There will be people who will offer services to say, I'll take this agent and then train it to do custom work for you in your particular environment. So just expect the typical, anytime a technology matures, these kinds of things happen, and expect that to happen. So if any of you are looking for your next startup opportunity, that's probably where it'll be in a couple of years. I'm about to show examples of what a classical product looked like, a Copilot and autonomous agent. Any questions thus far about this evolution? Okay, so let me jump into a real example. This was pre-AI. This is Microsoft Sentinel. This is what's called a SIM, Security Incident and Event Management Solution. What do SIMs do? So in any given company, tons of things are happening all the time. And Microsoft Sentinel is one of the very broadly deployed SIMs, by the way. It's probably the second most popular SIM right now after Splunk. Tons of things are happening. There are people doing things, there are servers doing things, there are cloud services doing things. All of them are generating logs of what they're doing. Those logs are collected in a tool like this in the SIM. The SIM also allows people to write rules that says, if that happens and that happens and that happens, then that's not normal. Please raise an alert. An example might be that Ida may log in from San Francisco, and then in 5 minutes, she logs in from Tokyo. That's simply not possible. There is no travel that takes you from San Francisco to Tokyo in 5 minutes. So what's going on over there? And so a SIM like this will flag that as an alert. Something is wrong over here. Now, it could be that Ida's password is hacked, and then there is some attacker sitting in Tokyo and attacking, so it's a real alert. Or it could be a false alert, which is maybe Ida has a laptop sitting at one of her relatives in Tokyo, and that's just periodically pinging the services. And so false alarm. Or maybe she's using a VPN that sometimes comes from San Francisco, sometimes comes from Tokyo, and so on. So sometimes these alerts that are raised are true, sometimes they're false. And that's what the SIM does. It basically just raises an alert and gives it to the security team. So this is a screenshot of a SIM in our lab environment where we are doing our emulations, we are deploying malware, we are deploying all kinds of attack sequences to test out our agents. So this is what the SIM has produced. Now, pre-AI, what would happen is that there would be an army of what are called tier one analysts, security analysts. These analysts open this, and their entire job is to just go through these alerts one by one. Every company has these people either in-house or they have outsourced it to some company in the Philippines or in India or Romania or somewhere. That's what's happening behind the scenes. Most of us don't realize this, but this is what security teams are doing behind the scenes of just going line by line, every single alert, and figuring out, okay, giving the example earlier of Ida's login from two different places. Okay, let's figure out what else Ida has been up to. Is it normal that over the last many months that I'm seeing logins from Ida from both places? Okay, I'm not seeing that. Do I know what laptop came, like what did that login from Tokyo look like? Did that come from a laptop that's in our inventory? Oh, okay, then maybe that's just a known device. So they're asking all these questions, and at some point, it's possible that they don't have enough information, and then they just call Ida saying, "Hey, was it you?" Or maybe call Ida's manager saying, "Do you know if she's traveling? Like, do you know what this is happening?" So it takes a long time to go through every single one of these. Most security analysts are burned out in a few years because they're just flooded. They're working 15-hour days going through these. And today, there is no way they can go through all of these alerts in a day. Fast forward to 2023 and 2024 when copilots became a thing. This is Microsoft's security copilot. if I am an analyst, instead of me doing all of that work, I can outsource some of that work to AI. So this is a prompt where I am typing, saying, okay, so this information over here, if I open this information, there's a ton of logs over there. I don't have time to go through it. So here I'm asking produce a visual to explain the activity of the download, the exploit. And now AI went through a bunch of logs and produced this. Now, AI can't tell you whether, in this case, it can't tell you whether or not that's a safe thing, but it takes guesses saying, this is what I'm observing is the sequence. And I think this is okay. I think this is not. But ultimately, it's still upon me as the security analyst to go keep asking questions. How about this? How about that? And instead of so all the questions that I would typically ask, where every question took me maybe 5 minutes to get the answer to, now I can get the answer in 15 seconds. That's the big difference. But I still, as a security analyst, I'm still doing that job. So instead of going through 40 alerts in a day, now I can probably go through 100 alerts in a day or something like that. So this is Copilot. So this definitely speeds me up, gives me more insights that I didn't have, makes me more effective. But it still requires me as a human to drive this. So there is no such thing as, hey, the number of people I need has gone down. Maybe that I can do 2 people's job, 3 people's job as a result. Um, so what's the next thing? This is where we are today. So this is autonomous agents. This is a screenshot of my company software, but it doesn't, like, as a concept, what's happening here is instead of a real human, now you have an AI agent that I hired. Think about them as I just hired somebody out of college and trained them. Instead of that, I'm hiring an agent from Symbian and training them. And what the agent is now doing is pulling alerts out of lots of tools in the company, looking at the alerts, investigating, asking all the right questions, just like humans would, and then doing the entire investigation on its own, saying, this was not a good alert. It was just false positive. This was a true positive. This was a real alert. Something bad is happening. Not just that, it also prepares, hey, how do I go fix it? In this case, nothing was required. In this particular case, there were 3 actions that were required to close out the issue. And it's just waiting for my approval. So at this point, I can step back and say, look, I don't need a real person to be looking at alerts anymore. This thing is just independently 24/7, 365, just doing this on its own. So I, as a human, am now freed up to do things that humans should be doing, which is strategy, looking after real threats, rather than the busy work of going through logs and working around limitations of tools. So that's where we are, going from being restricted by humans to now at this point, you're just fully on compute, no longer restricted by humans, going from processing about like 40 alerts a day per human to now several hundred alerts a day, because all I'm doing is guiding this thing a little bit once in a like couple of times a day, and the rest of it just does on its own. Any questions? There's a question in the chat. Oh no, that is the. Any questions about the journey or what an agent means, what a copilot means?
If I'm being honest, I don't know the difference between an agent and a copilot.
Got it. Thank you. Important question. Okay. Now, here is an old tool, right? Pre-AI, what I'm showing you here. Now, imagine, so this particular thing says, hey, this particular malware was detected. Now, as a security analyst, all kinds of questions go in my head. Number one is this real malware, or is this one of our test teams trying out something? Maybe they are testing my defenses. Second question that goes on, okay, so the malware ran. What's the big deal? Is this a machine? Is this running on a machine that's important to my business? Or is this maybe just some lab environment where, okay, let it run. I don't care. Third question is, okay, let's say it is infected. What does the malware do? Is there defense in depth around it to prevent it from having bad effects? So all kinds of questions go on in my head. Today, I would need to manually follow up. I would need to look at, okay, if I want to answer the question, is this machine important to me? I'll look up a tool called an MDM, um, a mobile device manager or an asset manager that typically most companies have a list of, here are all my devices and this device is deployed in production. This device belongs to so-and-so person. So now I'll have to go figure out what that tool is, log into that tool, go look up what that is, go look up who owns that tool, go look up what do we use that device for. So all of these are very manual steps that's going to take me probably 15, 20 minutes just to answer that one question, right? A co-pilot, I can ask the question saying, hey, tell me a little more about this device. It knows to talk to, so I am the one triggering it. I'm the one asking the question as a human, but then it has enough knowledge about the system to then go do these kinds of elementary tasks for me. So instead of me spending 20 minutes answering the question, I just ask a question of this person. Think about a co-pilot as interns that know very specific tasks, and I still have to give them a task. They'll come back 1 hour later. I give them the next task. They'll come back 1 hour later. I'll give them the next task. So it's literally I'm micromanaging the co-pilot in doing this. It'll answer me. Then I'm telling it what next to do. It'll answer me and so on. Going to an agent, it's like going from working with an intern to working with a fairly experienced person who can make decisions on their own. I no longer have to tell it what to do. So I set up the agent once in my company, and then I can go for the weekend. I can go off for the week. I don't have to keep asking it. So the agent on its own now has retrieved alerts from guard duty, asked the questions, the same questions that earlier I was prompting the co-pilot in, saying, okay, if it's a malware alert, let me go ask the question, what device is this running on? Who owns that device? What do we do on that device? Is that important to the company? And it then goes does things on its own. So while the co-pilot is a series of micro automations, this is literally the entire loop is running independently. I don't need a human. Does that? You're right, Kate, in terms of that there is a blurry line. I could argue that at some point, if the number of little tasks that the co-pilot were doing were growing and growing and growing, where I'm just telling it, go investigate this alert and come back to me. 2, I might up level to say, go investigate all alerts and get back to me. I can imagine a co-pilot evolving to be an agent. So there is a blurry line there, but generally a co-pilot is considered the kind of software where I'm issuing a command, I get back answers quickly, and it stops there. It doesn't decide what to do. It follows the user's command, whereas an agent is something that has an independent brain. It evolves. So it learns automatically from the environment on a regular basis. So for instance, here I might say, hey, you got that wrong. That should have been a true positive. It'll learn. It'll come back. Next time around, it's going to follow a different direction and so on. So from a pay by the hour worker to somebody with high agency who you are saying, go do what you think is right, is the rough analogy. But there is a blurry line. Yes. Does that analogy make sense?
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so now
Sumedh,
yeah.
you had a similar question in the chat, but I think you answered it. And it was, can you point out some of the differences between an agent and a co-pilot? I think that was just the answer you gave.
Yes. Yes. You could argue that over time, what's going to happen is people are going to build. If I have 100 agents deployed in my company, I might build a Copilot interface on them. Just like today, if I need something, I go to one of my colleagues and ask them a question saying, hey, can you do this task for me? And sometimes they operate in micro mode, as in they'll just do exactly what I ask them to do. And sometimes they'll just go do things independently. Again, that's another blurry line where I can imagine software evolving to a world where these agents also have some Copilot functionality. In fact, that's what happens in our interface as well. Mostly this is independent, but we do have a chat window on the side where the user can say, hey, in addition to everything you did, can you please do that? So over time, I don't think software as a whole is going to be classified as a Copilot or an agent. It's more the same software is going to have different characteristics in different parts. So there are some tasks that it is going to do independently on its own. And in that case, it's operating in agent mode. And there are some cases where it's going to say, okay, I'm a genie. What wish do you have? And you give it a command and it'll do exactly that and then stop. That's Copilot mode. So a lot of software is actually evolving to have a mix of both over time. And so you'll see that blurry line over time. Okay, so I gave an example of how alert investigation progresses from manual to Copilot to agentic. Here are some other areas in security operations that are also rapidly embracing AI. So the act of detecting threats, that's an entire, like there are companies making billions of dollars just around this one aspect of it. Just looking at lots of logs in your environment and then finding out what's the problem. I highlighted this in blue because this is a use case for classical AI, not generative AI so much. Anomaly detection is another one where I'm not identifying a threat per se, but I'm just identifying that something looks different than usual. So for instance, it might say that Sumedh normally never logs in at 2 a.m., but I'm now suddenly seeing him log in at 2 a.m. every day. Like, what's happening there? That doesn't mean that I'm compromised. It's just something is odd. That's all. Alert triage and prioritization, we talked about investigation. Log analysis is another one. As a human, if I have to go look at thousands of lines of logs, it's hard to see the pattern. But AI is really good at seeing patterns and then summarizing across all of this. These are the trends happening. Very, very useful for security analysts. Threat hunting is an advanced use case of detection where I know that a particular attacker is after me. I know exactly the techniques they're using. Can I go around, look throughout the entire company to go find out evidence of, I see this thing happened and that thing happened and that thing happened. This particular attacker called APT-42 operating out of North Korea is after me. So that's threat hunting. Cybersecurity typically has a detection and response arm that says, my job is to just detect that something has gone wrong and react to it. There is a separate arm called the prevention arm, which is like trying to get ahead of the game. And so here, some examples of vulnerability management. These guys, this sub-team of security, their entire job is just to say, of all the software that I have, which ones is there any software on which I have not pushed any updates recently? Are there any known vulnerabilities on that? Let me go push updates on that. Security code review is another one. Every piece of software that your engineers write, somebody needs to review it to make sure that good security practices are followed. And that's a very human exercise today. And increasingly, AI is getting brought in to identify common mistakes. Pen testing is the act of, there are entire consultancy companies who come in armed with knowledge of how attackers work and then just simulate it. They like push the buttons. They might test your web server to see, is there any hole there? They might send you a phishing mail to see, hey, are your users prepared for it, and so on. And then threat modeling is looking at your software design and similar to security code review, but just looking at designs rather than code. All of these areas are changing pretty rapidly. There is new software, like probably 3 or 4 announcements in every single one of these areas every week. Lots of experiments happening. Very, very hot area. And then finally, governance, security training. Who here hasn't had annual security training? The annual security training that somebody puts together lectures and simulation. Now imagine that is very customized to you. Imagine that you did something and immediately an agent on your computer detects that, looks like you're not aware of those practices. Let me launch a custom training for you. Imagine making highly customized training and then simulating bad things for you just to be able to identify. So that way you learn better. It's at the time you're doing something wrong rather than 6 months later. And similarly, risk assessments. If I were trying to understand, okay, I'm buying some software from this little startup, what could go wrong? So I need to study the company, I need to study their documentation, I need to go through tons and tons of documents pretty rapidly, and might take me a week or 2 weeks. With AI, now I can consume these things really fast, and within an hour or two, I can spit out my risk assessment. So these are all areas where uh, there's rapid advance happening with AI. It's a great time to get into the space. There's a question on the chat. How effective are the agents at identifying a device or tool when multiple sensor tools each provide only partial information? Specifically, can the agents aggregate these fragmented inputs to support the operator in making the best decision? Additionally, do the agents dynamically adjust the weight or importance of each? Ooh, it looks like you're asking me a question about my company's product. uh, I mean, yes, it's an very interesting angle. I think you're hitting on a core point. Today, an average company has 75 different security tools. It's just insane just how fragmented the security space is. And it's like looking at each leg of an elephant and nobody really sees the entire elephant. Um, how effective are these tools? Our tool right now is precisely in that space of where we are getting alerts. Let's say, for instance, actually, I have this thing over here. This is my company's software. It pulls in alerts from AWS, it pulls in alerts from your SIM, it pulls in alerts from your Microsoft ecosystem, and so on. And then for each of these alerts, it then does a bunch of, okay, it's doing a demo to a Japanese person. Let me change this to English. It does a bunch of investigation. You don't have to know the details of what's happening under the hood, but it's basically starting from an alert. It's trying to find other alerts that are related, saying, hey, this alert is for this user. For that user, do I see alerts in AWS? Do I see alerts in Google Cloud, in Microsoft? So it's trying to stitch together that entire ecosystem and then come up with a summary over here that says, here is everything that I found summarized like this. So are they effective? Absolutely, yes. I mean, have we solved the problem? No, there's a long way to go, but definitely AI is making a big difference in terms of stitching together all these into a larger holistic insight. Great question. Okay, now that was most of my talk was around AI in cybersecurity. Now, one side effect, one important big elephant in the room over there is AI as a whole is new. And it doesn't matter whether you're applying it to cybersecurity or applying to any other domain. The first question that we get from large enterprises is, can I trust it? There are a lot of issues. So I won't go into the details of all of these, but the models that we are using, what were they trained on? If some attacker was able to feed lots of junk and misleading data into the model, now the model is doing bad things. It's like hiring a person on your team who is in cahoots or maybe got just like brainwashed by the crime members, like some criminal gang, to say anything you learn here, please always write a blog post over here. And so that's what they got trained on, and that's what they do every day. And so your AI can go wrong in lots of ways because the training itself was wrong. Sometimes it can be manipulated. So when I give a prompt to a copilot, I can craft it carefully such that it exploits a weakness of the model and does something wrong. So those things are real. So you probably have seen a lot of these things in ChatGPT, where you type in a command, you type in a prompt, and the answer is just completely unexpected. Those are hallucinations, and sometimes people play to those. Now imagine if your system is automatically acting on the output of AI. You're just making a bad thing worse at this point. So net, there are a lot of unique risks, and there's an entire breed of companies working just on this. my company doesn't do it, but like entire breed of companies. That's like Protect AI is one of the biggest that got acquired by Cisco recently for $700 million. This is a company that's like 2 or 3 years old. Um, their entire job is to look at this layer of safety around AI. Every big company is also doing it. Microsoft is doing it, Google is doing it, Meta is doing it, Amazon is doing it, but there are a bunch of standalone software vendors just looking at if you're using AI, how do I make that safe? I'll pause there. I think the bigger topic for us as product managers is what does all this mean to me? Now, I'll talk about how my job changed as a product manager. I built software and security software in particular for many, many years. And I'm finding that now that I'm building software that is AI enabled, here are the big shifts in my role that I've seen. Number one is I have to stay up to date with what's happening in the AI world literally every day. Gone are the days when I can peek once in a couple of months to learn about what are the new developments. Literally, this space is changing just so fast. That number one, I need to understand what's real and what's hype. There's a lot of hype, as all of you know. But also, problems that were considered impossible to solve yesterday are now suddenly possible today because, hey, OpenAI just dropped a new model that makes something else possible. And so the moment that happens, there is usually a competitor jumping on it, trying to make that happen. So as as a product manager for an AI product, I can't just leave it to my engineers to go do the latest, but I also have to stay up to date with the capabilities of the latest AI models just to be able to identify, okay, I had identified a set of business problems that are important but not solvable. Which subset of them now suddenly became solvable today is the big thing, and vice versa. What did we think was solvable yesterday that we are finding with latest AI research that, oh, wow, there was actually some issues we did not realize, and then they just keep at it every day. So that's number one. I would say probably an hour or two of my day are just trying to keep up to date with the latest. That's a big investment every day. The second shift that I'm seeing in my role is in the past, I looked at a certain user persona. So if I go back over here, for instance, we targeted this kind of software for a particular user persona. The next version of the software might show visuals over here, might show make some things easier, but it's still the same user persona. The Copilot was, you could argue, still the same user persona. But as I move from there to agents, a big shift happens. This is not an evolution. This is literally a disruption at that point to the organization that's buying agents. Why? Because the analysts that were looking at every single alert no longer have to do that. Now, buying an agent in your company is like getting an army of fresh college hires who are smart enough that you can train them a bit and they can do things on their own. And at that point, your role shifts from being an analyst to the manager of agents, just like a manager of an army of college hires. And that's a very fundamental shift. It's not just doing more or doing the same thing in an easier way. It's literally now, instead of doing the thing, it's just like in regular life, shifting from a software engineer to a software engineering manager, or shifting from a product manager to a manager of product managers. It's a completely different mind shift because now you have to constantly think in terms of what is the other person doing? What are their challenges? How can I enable them to succeed? That's a very different set of problems to think about. And that's what my users are now shifting to. How do I prepare my customers for that shift? Because roles are getting disrupted, they have to go through this gradually. How do I build UX differently for this world? So those are the things that are taking up a lot of mind share now. The third thing, we talked a bit about trust in AI, all those issues that are happening with AI. Our customers are smart enough to realize that as well. They all ask us these questions saying, why should I trust this piece of AI? I'll tell you an incident. 5 or 6 years ago, when we started down the journey in Microsoft of using AI for anomaly detection, the product that I had built, the anomaly detection on it was good enough to identify attackers. And it could easily identify, hey, that particular activity and that particular activity doesn't look normal. But guess what? Our own analysts, despite being in the same company, used to just ignore it, saying, oh, that's just AI saying some, who knows if I can trust it. There were real attacks. The AI was actually successful, but users did not trust it. The same thing we are finding here. Some of it is because there were real issues. Some of it is just because it's a different paradigm. So I have to spend a lot of time framing how we are tackling it, working with our customers to make sure that the initial pilot use cases are safe for them, for us, and then making sure that after the pilot, as they go into production, who owns what? If something goes wrong, is it the customer's responsibility because they guided the agent wrong? Is it my responsibility, my company's responsibility because we built the agent? Or is it the OpenAI or Cloud or Gemini, like the model's responsibility because they got the model wrong? We are in a shared responsibility world, and how do I make sure that the accountability is in the right place? Figuring that out is another big mindset. And finally, something that I'm not yet spending time on, but we are running into is localization. Historically, we did every software that I built, we localized for the world, and was a pretty easy process. What we did was any string in the product, we kept it separate from the main product. And then we had people who would localize that string, and then we put it back in the product. Pretty easy. And the strings that we had were it. But in the age of AI, with Copilot and all that, the content is now dynamically generated. There is no opportunity for a real language expert to go look at it and say that is the right language. So as an example of things that we are facing, we have customers in Japan, and sometimes our translations are just wrong. They are correct Japanese, but they clearly sound AI-ish. They don't really sound like a real person. And so how do you validate this? It's an unsolved problem. I know that even large companies are struggling with this right now, but we all have to go figure out how to do it. I wanted to pause there. I think Ida told me to leave 15 minutes for questions. I went over a bit, so let me just pause there and open up the room, free-form conversation. Any questions, any observations, feedback?
If you're on LinkedIn as well, if you put it in the chat, I'll pick it up. And you can type it in the chat here, or feel free to also raise your hand in Zoom.
And if you have, along the lines of what I spoke, you have similar observations to contribute, please do that as well. Be great for the community to share. I'll pose a question. Does anybody want to volunteer? What are you doing less of as a product manager in this AI world? I talked about what am I doing more of. Any volunteers? I personally find that I'm doing less of starting from scratch. When I write PRDs or do some planning, the fact that I can just start with ChatGPT and get going is significantly saving me time. So, and not just that, I also don't necessarily need to get it to a level of perfection that I needed to in the past, because now my counterparts on engineering and design and marketing are self-empowered. If I just give high-level pointers, they can go from there and then do the research on their own also. So definitely the breadth of things that I had to do as a product manager has reduced. I don't have to do it all. Clifton Thomas says less documentation, less time waiting on design. Exactly. That resonates a lot with me as well.
You did get a comment on LinkedIn from Marjorie saying the insight on your shift on PM is so on point.
Thank you. So now to summarize, if there are no other questions, a couple of things, just very, very high level. If you are looking to get into cybersecurity, happy to connect me on LinkedIn, happy to answer questions, guide you along the way. It's definitely a hot area. There was a saying, I think that's still true. There is no unemployment in security. AI is shifting security fast, just like it is shifting every other area. Agents are the future, and there is second order effects where if you want to go do your own startup, there's probably opportunities there. And then as a PM, I think if you're working not just on security, but any area, these are areas that I think we have to consciously think about as a PM to get ahead and make the product successful.
Sumedh, you did get one question on LinkedIn, and you have one here as well. The question was, how do smaller AI companies that exist to solve a niche problem build moats against the traditional enterprise companies integrating copilots and agents?
Great question, because that's a question relevant to us as a small company as well. So here's the thing. The biggest moat that small companies have is your risk tolerance. There's actually two moats. If you look at most of the big companies investing in AI, there's really two categories. There is the pure play AI companies like OpenAI. If you have some insight that makes your model smarter, there is no moat. Most of these foundational models will probably do what you did, and you're seeing this every few months where OpenAI just releases something and thousands of startups get wiped away. If, on the other hand, you're trying to solve a real business problem like what we're doing, then typically those things are solved by big companies like CrowdStrike, Palo Alto, Microsoft, Google, and so on. There are two things going on over there. Number one is most of them have existing big businesses, and then they're usually trying to grow that business a bit. And what you'll find is that there is nobody really looking at the entire ecosystem. So that's one part where if you're vendor neutral, and like in our case, we investigate alerts from just about any software. And that's unlike products from the big companies that are very Microsoft specific, very CrowdStrike specific, ours is neutral. So that is number one. Number two is the risk tolerance. Most of these companies have such high reputations to protect that they are not really using AI to the full degree it is possible because there is just so much risk in getting it wrong. I find that, for instance, Copilot has far more technical capability, but intentionally it is locked down because the risk of getting things wrong is high. Even if 1 out of 99 cases backfires, this big company's reputation just sinks. On the other hand, for small companies like us, what ends up happening is that the kinds of customers that are playing with us are willing to say, look, I am taking a risk on a small company like you. I have such a burning problem that it is okay if three out of 10 times things go wrong, as long as there is I'll do the work to contain the risk. But those other 7 times you get it right, you're bringing me so much value that I'll go for it. So that is the second mode. The third is the speed. To be honest, like this entire area is going just so fast that most of the times, as a small company, you're not competing against a big company. You're competing against one product manager working in some small area of the big company. So they are also a startup in that sense. So think about that as the biggest moat. Yeah. Somebody had their hand up over here.
Yeah, it was me. Hi, Sumedh. First of all, thank you for such so many insights. It was great. So my question is regarding. So the question is not just related to security and AI, but in general, when we talk about trust, and there has been a lot of talk about trust in smaller startups, right? How do you communicate? How do you tackle that communication that? A lot of times there's this problem that we face where our potential customers or potential clients come up and they're like what this AI model is trying to do might be wrong at times, and we might not be able to even identify it, right? So how do you tackle problems like that in communicating? Yes, it might go wrong, but then it might also go right in so many other areas and things like that.
Great question. So just a quick flashback to 10 years ago. I joined the cloud team at Microsoft when cloud was new. And for every customer that we tried to get on board, it seemed like there were more naysayers than people excited to get on. The reason being, it's pretty easy for people to say, oh, this could go wrong and that could go wrong. Oh, I'm moving this application to the cloud. What if you guys have access to it? What if this goes down? So there is just no end to those kinds of things. That
Right.
did not prevent the cloud from succeeding. Why? Because I noticed every single time a risk person goes up against the business who has something to gain, the business wins. Period. No exceptions. So, what the real thing is, are you providing enough value that the risk concerns are, they accept the risk? So, that is number one. Now, having said that, there clearly are big risks, and you have to contain that, and then you have to tell the story around what you're doing. So, for instance, in our company, um, the fact that we're using AI, we are not just blindly using off-the-shelf models. We actually have our own layer called Trusted LLM that has we're doing a lot to make sure that we're controlling hallucinations, prompt injections, all those other risks that are happening. We're using AI in a very particular way that makes sure that the impact of anything going wrong can be contained. So there's a lot of thought that has gone into how we are using AI, and we communicate that proactively to our customers about what we're doing there. So clearly, you cannot get this for free. You have to do the work, you have to communicate it. But bigger thing, like I said, is you really have to have enough value that people will be willing to buy your product despite the risks also. No great answer, but that's the high level.
No, that helped. Thank you.
There's a question on the chat. What are your recommendations to stay ahead? I don't have a great answer for that, to be honest. Like, things are moving so fast. I spend time on LinkedIn following my network, just like trying to understand what's going on. But to the second part of your question, should I be building more with AI or just learning more about AI through courses and content? Building more with AI, no question about that. Like, if I was not in this company applying AI, I would have learned 1/10 or maybe less of what I do know. There is just too much hype out there. There's an echo chamber on LinkedIn. Do not believe everything that people are saying about what AI is capable of. Do not believe everything they say about what AI is getting wrong. The reality is more nuanced. So the only way you do it is by building things yourself and getting a feel for what it is capable of and what things are going wrong. In general, I would hazard to say everything I know today and have learned over time and retained is because I failed to do it at some point. That's the only way. That's the only way I learn. So try it, fail to do it, and then push the boundary of why did it fail? Okay, this is why. Okay, this is what makes it succeed. That's the only way. Anything that other people say sounds great, but then it just goes out the other ear if I haven't really done something about it. So
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, Sumedh. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time as well as your own. We're 6 minutes past the hour. Thank you so much for such an insightful conversation and discussion about AI in cybersecurity for product managers. It's incredibly helpful and insightful, and I think we all learned a lot today. Um, and if people need to find you, I'm sure you're on LinkedIn and you're on the on our post in our event. And if anybody has any questions, please post it on LinkedIn or reach out and Sumedh, if you do have the time, if you are able to. Um, for Yeah, so again, thank you so much for everything. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about AI and product management specifically, feel free to join our course. Kicks off May 12th. It's taught by Corey Hill from Amazon. He's a AI leader at Amazon, as well as Kai, who is a leader at Uber, working on Michelangelo, their AI platform there. So thank you so much for joining us. Feel free to leave us comments in the survey at the end. And again, Sumedh, thank you so much. It was an incredible discussion, and I know we all learned a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Great discussion.
Absolutely. Enjoy your weekend, everybody, and Easter Sunday if you celebrate it. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
So hi there, my name is Kevin. I am a product manager at a company called Vicasta. Really, I've had some exposure to AI and ML products in my professional life, and really I joined the AI ML cohort to get a better understanding of like the end-to-end AI ML product development cycle. So yeah, I really appreciate the cohort. It's helped me a lot in product decision making, and yeah, much appreciated.